In this video, we're just going to finish off with the management skills, and then we'll talk about the relationship between management styles and skills. So first of all, we'll look at team leadership skills. That's essentially just coaching and encouraging, facilitating a team, and maybe some conflict management. Now, it's important, especially in the flatter structures, that there will be lots of teams in that case, and if they have a matrix, they're obviously all based on teams working on projects. So managers need to lead the teams by encouraging, coaching, facilitating all the employees within that team, and they're trying to get them to be creative and achieve goals and objectives in the most efficient and effective way possible. So one of the important words is empower. So with flatter structures in these days, it's becoming more and more important to empower employees in the workplace. And what that means is that managers actually give employees some power in decision making, so they actually make decisions within the workplace. So it's similar to like a participative management style where you actually empower your employees. Stress management. Now, stress occurs when people aren't able to cope with the stimulus around them. Now, stress management is not only for the manager reducing their own stress, but reducing the stress of their workers. So that's where the skill really comes into it. So it could be that there's been lots of work on, or that there's a major change in the organisation, and the manager needs to manage the stress of the employees to ensure that's reduced. So they need to undertake many tasks, and that can cause stress. So that's for the manager, but also for the employees. And good managers are aware of that and have the ability to say no when too much is asked of them. Now, there's just some ways of coping with stress. But managers use stress skills when they introduce strategies to help staff and themselves cope with change and stressful environments. So the managers are able to organise activities to help staff reduce stress, such as it could be exercise session, a social event, could be meditation. They could go bowling or go get to leave work early or something on one day and actually go and do an activity together, just to try and reduce the amount of stress, especially in a stressful situation. In times of change, if there's a downsizing, that can be very stressful for employees. So, they might have training days where they develop the skills of the employees, and it could be in interview techniques or whatever it is to help reduce the stress for the employees. So it's not just managing stress for the manager, but it's the manager managing stress also for the employee. So that's how they can use it. And you can use that in an answer in a particular situation. Now, decision making and problem solving, we use these together because there was a question, I think, in the 2007 exam where students didn't do very well, and it asked for a decision making process. So if you see decision making and problem solving, you should try and avoid using them together. So if a question asks for two management skills, don't do decision making and problem solving. I think it's important to class them as the same thing. So it's simply making a choice from a list of alternatives. Now, another process. So this is a third process that we've gone through. In order to undertake or make decisions or problem solve, it's important that you go through a process. So the first step is to identify the problem, gather relevant information, develop alternatives, analyze alternatives, choose the best alternative, implement it, and as always, evaluate. So IGDACE. That is a decision-making process. There is no specific decision-making process that is listed in the study design, but you are expected to be able to go through a decision-making or a problem-solving process. And that is the one that I use. But again, feel free to use your own, but just make sure that it goes through that general process of, remember, we have to identify the problem, otherwise there's no problem to solve. And how do you know, how can you evaluate it if you can't assess the actual problem? Gather relevant information, that's always important. So gather information before you develop alternatives. When then you develop the alternatives, analyse them, see which one's the best or most appropriate. You might be looking at cost, you might be looking at impact on stakeholders, but you analyse the best one. And then once you've done that, you select and implement it, and as always, evaluate it, and you look at how it's performing, how that decision is performing. You might use performance indicators to measure that, and then if there's a lack in performance, then you can either choose an alternative, a different alternative, or you can just make some minor adjustments. But that's important that you need to know one of those. Now, the relationship between styles and skills, we've mentioned it throughout these videos, but essentially the type of management style that a manager selects, then the skills will often be used, the same skills will often be used, but they won't be used in the same way. Especially with participative, then there'll be communication, and that will be two-way communication. There'll also be delegation, negotiation, teamwork skills. They'll be some of the really important skills. Autocratic, then communication will also be used, as will decision making, but they're used very differently. So the communication is one way, the decision making is used solely by the manager, whereas in a participative, we know that the decision making is made by both the manager and the employees. So that's important.